What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Chiefs Zone podcast. I am Farzin Vasugian. Thank you all for joining me tonight on this Wednesday, February the 19th. Hope you're all staying warm. I know a lot of you guys probably working from home, don't have school this week. Or is there such thing as no school anymore? Aren't they now doing virtual learning if you're out a long time? I don't know how this all works anymore. I'm not in school anymore, so I graduated years ago, guys. But nonetheless, hope you're all having a good week, staying warm, staying away from all this nasty cold weather we've got in Kansas City this week. Let's forget about all of that and talk about some Chiefs football here. Not a lot of news regarding the Kansas City Chiefs, but we still have some things to touch on and talk about here. There's been a little bit of news. Again, not too much, but still a lot of things that we can talk about, react to here on tonight's episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. We will talk about the news that came out from The Athletic that the Chiefs are not expected to use the franchise tag. What does that mean for the Chiefs and some of the players who are eligible for the franchise tag? We'll talk about that later on. Also, the NFL has announced its salary cap increase. Is that a good thing for Kansas City? And if so, how much of a difference does that make for Kansas City? In fact, you'll be surprised by some of the salary cap numbers out there in the NFL. I had no idea about a few of them. You'll be very surprised when I read you some of the numbers out there that some teams have when it comes to cap space. And also some dates that you need to learn with the NFL Combine coming up, and also with the free agency, the deadline for the franchise tag, all of that stuff. The dates will give you for all of those this offseason that you need to know on this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. Want to let you know this podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is where I go to for all of my sports ticketing needs. You can buy your tickets from there. You can also sell your tickets from there. I had a Royals game where I was able to change my tickets, actually get better seats, but I had to sell the other ones. So I just put a listing over on SeatGeek, and it's up there. It's available for people to purchase. You can do the same thing over at SeatGeek as well. And when it comes to buying tickets, you guys can use my promo code if you're a new SeatGeek customer. My promo code Farzine, and you'll save $20 off your first order from SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com, pick your tickets, and at checkout, new customers can enter my promo code Farzine and save $20 off their first order from SeatGeek. How are you guys doing tonight? See you guys, Vicky, Lori, Bob, Jim. I'm sure we've got many more coming in shortly. Appreciate all of you guys joining me tonight here on this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. I will just say this right off the bat, because it's been a very quiet week and a half when it came to the Kansas City Chiefs. Not a lot going on. So if you guys have a question, ask it tonight, because I can get to those tonight. We will not be doing a Red Friday live chat unless within the next 48 hours, some breaking news comes up with the Kansas City Chiefs. And if that were to be the case, we'll do a Chiefs Zone podcast and a Red Friday live chat in conjunction, just in case anything happens between now until then. But do not expect a Red Friday live chat this Red Friday. We will answer any questions you guys have. So if you have a question, please drop it below. I'll get to those later on in the podcast here. Starting off, Nate Taylor of The Athletic put out there that the Kansas City Chiefs are not expected to use the franchise tag, which means guys like Trey Smith, Nick Bolton, Justin Reed, some of the players who were probably the candidates, the favorites to receive the franchise tag. More so Smith and Bolton than Reed, but I suppose Reed was always an option if the Chiefs wanted to go that route with him. They will not be using the franchise tag on any of those players this offseason. If you recall, last year, the Chiefs, they used the franchise tag on L'Jarius Sneed, and shortly after doing that, they locked up Chris Jones to a long-term deal, and about a week or two later, they traded away L'Jarius Sneed to the Tennessee Titans. Ended up being a very good trade for Kansas City, considering Sneed only played, 5 or 6 games, and the Chiefs got a very high draft pick out of that. So there will not be a tag and trade type of situation this year. Now, I see your question, Lori, and I think a couple of other people asking, why wouldn't the Chiefs tag a player and potentially trade them rather than, just letting them walk and not be able to get anything out of that? And that's actually a fair question here. And that does kind of go into the salary cap increase, and I'll get to that shortly. But when you look at the Chiefs right now, with the salary cap increase, the Chiefs are just below $8 million, 7.941 to be exact. I mean, I'm not going to read you the exact number, but you get the ballpark number. Very well close to it. If you were to franchise tag Nick Bolton or Trey Smith, that's going to essentially put your cap space in a bind, and you would not be able to really do anything in free agency. You would basically be locked up. Now, obviously, and again, we'll get into it. The Chiefs have the possibility of restructuring some deals, and we'll get into that when talking about the salary cap increase. But it doesn't appear that the Chiefs would use the tag on Bolton or Smith, which means one of two things. I just mentioned one of them, in that they're probably just going to let them do what they want to do and not have to risk being locked up with the salary cap. And if you remember a couple of years ago, it was not a franchise tag situation, but Chris Jones was asking for a new deal. The Chiefs knew that they had to work something out with him. Extending him would have helped alleviate some of the cap issues from the 2023 offseason. But because Chris Jones and the Chiefs were at a standoff with contract negotiations, the Chiefs were not really able to do anything that offseason. They were trying to get DeAndre Hopkins that year, if you guys recall that. He ended up signing with the Tennessee Titans. But when you look at the Chiefs, and specifically that offseason with Chris Jones, not able to do anything, and the Chiefs were kind of in a bind with the salary cap. If they were to use the franchise tag on, let's just say, Trey Smith, they would not really be able to do anything unless they were able to find a trade partner real fast. And that is not really a realistic scenario. That can kind of put the Chiefs in a very sticky situation, and trying to retain some of their other guys. And listen, we haven't, like I said, it's been a very quiet week of Chiefs news, so we haven't really heard much. Guys like Hollywood Brown, Kareem Hunt, DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Pennell, I mean, all those guys you would have a very difficult time keeping, because you'd be locked up if you were to use a franchise tag on any of those players there. So what do you need to know when it comes to the... Oh, here's the other thing. The other meaning behind the Chiefs not using the salary cap, maybe it means they can figure something out, and we just don't know it right now. Not even the insiders are getting that leak from their sources or whatnot. Meaning that if they were to not use the franchise tag, then yeah, maybe they feel confident that they could re-sign some of their top tier free agents, whether it's Nick Bolton, Trey Smith, Justin Reed, Mike Pennell. I mentioned Hopkins, Hollywood, Kareem Hunt are all free agents right now. Mike Pennell, Turk Wharton. I mean, you got a lot of free agents this year, unfortunately, a lot if you're Kansas City. So they've got a lot of things to figure out this offseason with their players that are eligible for free agency. Again, we don't know what's going to happen. Now, with the salary cap increase, that's the one thing that I think, and I'm seeing some people talk about this right now in the chat here. And by the way, for those of you just coming in late, if you guys did not hear, we're not doing a Red Friday live chat unless there's some breaking news within the next 48 hours. So if you guys do have a question, drop it below, and we'll get to some of those tonight, because there will not be a Red Friday live chat unless there's breaking news. So just a heads up there, if you guys, because I know someone will ask on Friday, hey, where's the Red Friday live chat? I'm looking for it. Well, there's not much to talk about. So just giving you guys a heads up now. But as far as the increase go, and this came from Dan Graziano of ESPN, the salary cap is expected to go anywhere from $277.5 million to $281.5 million. Which is way up from last year's of $255.4 million. And the cap will have increased by more than $53 million over the last 2 years. As far as this year goes, and I saw this from Ari Mirov of the 33rd team, he said that it's an increase of anywhere between $22.1 million and $26.1 million from last year, beating what most executives were expecting for the upcoming offseason, which is obviously good news for a lot of teams. If you're a team that's kind of in the hole, then it kind of helps you dig out of that. Some teams are still in the hole by a lot, and I'll get to those numbers shortly. But if you're a team like, let's just say, let's say the New England Patriots, who literally have nobody when it comes to a big term contract. Well, the Patriots just went from $119 million in cap space to $126 million. And, you know, when you got a guy like Mike Vrabel, I'm sure there are a lot of guys that would be willing to go over and play for a coach like that. So they're certainly a team eligible. The Raiders, they went from $92 million, $92.5 million to almost $100 million. So a team like the Raiders, this certainly helps them, as well as they've got a new head coach and very well respected head coach in Pete Carroll, that a lot of players would probably be willing to go there and play for him. Then you got teams like, let's say, the Cincinnati Bengals, who are top 10 in the NFL when it comes to salary cap space. Well, they just went from $46 million to about $53.1 million. And that's pretty significant because they've got a lot of top tier players that they're trying to lock up. It's not going to be easy, but this certainly helps. Now, what does that mean for a team like Kansas City? Now, I'll just say straight off the bat, some of this salary cap shit, I truly do not get, nor am I going to pretend to understand. I did hear in the offseason, right when the Super Bowl was over, the Chiefs had roughly $11 million in cap space. Well, I don't know exactly what happened from then and all the way to now, because the Chiefs, according to Over the Cap, again, all these numbers I'm giving to you are overthecap.com. If you just search Over the Cap salary cap space onto Google or something, it'll show you all the teams and the cap space that they have. The Chiefs were over the cap by $916,000. Now, because of the salary cap increase, that puts the Chiefs in a better position at $7,941,128. So 7.9 to be exact, very close to $8 million. That's not a lot still. If you're trying to lock up a guard in the NFL, a right guard specifically, or any guard really, left or right, you gotta, I mean, there's a lot to figure out at that position there. Just to give you an example, Joe Thuney is making very close to 20. His cap number for 2025 is $27 million. Trey Smith, this is 2024, pardon me. Trey Smith is looking for that kind of a deal. So this does not help you. And by the way, a guy like Trey Smith, who was drafted in the 6th round of the 2021 NFL draft. Yeah. A guy like Trey Smith is probably looking to hit the bank, because he dealt with not making a lot of money for so many years and wants that type of deal. Here are the top 5 cap hits at the guard position. This is left or right guard. Joe Thuney's number 1 at $26.97 million, very close to $27 million. Quentin Nelson of the Colts at $25.2 million. Elgton Jenkins of the Packers at $14.43 million. Jonah Jackson from the Rams at $13.7 million. And then Kevin Dotson at $12.6 million. So that is still a lot of money. I mean, the range obviously goes, you have Joe Thuney and Quentin Nelson. I mean, they're pretty high up there, but then there's a big gap between number 2 and number 3. I have a feeling Trey Smith is going to want money very similar to what Quentin Nelson and Joe Thuney have. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but just looking at Trey Smith in his 4-year career so far, this was by far the best season he's had. No sacks this season. First time in his career where he had no sacks. And also, he had about 20-some pressures allowed this season. That's the fewest he's surrendered in a single season for Trey Smith. So that is pretty damn good when you look at Trey Smith and, just what he could be looking for this offseason, whether it's in Kansas City or outside of Kansas City. Now, I have mentioned that for the Kansas City Chiefs, there are some guys who could be eligible for restructuring their contracts this offseason here. When you look at the Chiefs, obviously the first one that sticks out is Patrick Mahomes. And I'm pulling up his cap number right now because it is a big one for 2025. His cap hit is $66.258 million. That's shit ton of money. And we know Mahomes, I mean, he's always willing to work things out. Mahomes is his contract, his cap hit is a fourth of the team's cap hit, almost 24.09% to be exact. That's a shit ton of money right there. Chris Jones at 34, close to $35 million. Jawaan Taylor, north of $27 million. Travis Kelce, very close to $20 million. And again, we don't know Travis Kelce, what's going to happen with him. Creed Humphrey just signed a new deal. That's going to be very close to $10.8 million for him. So those are the top six guys right there. You got to imagine they work on Patrick Mahomes' contract, Jawaan Taylor. I don't think Chris Jones is going to be a guy that be willing to do a contract restructure because of the things he went through in the past. He's made a lot of money. And I don't know, maybe he just wanted the record-breaking deal for him and his agents, because his agents can use that as a way to convince guys, players to sign with them, or hire them, rather, I should say, and say, hey, look, we got this guy the highest paid contract for a defensive tackle in NFL history. I mean, I don't know. Chris Jones, would he be willing to restructure that? I suppose it's on the table. Jawaan Taylor, I mean, that's something the Chiefs absolutely need to look into right there. And I will say this right now, and again, I'm looking at Spot Track. Over the cap is a little different as well. If the Chiefs were to just cut Jawaan Taylor, they would have, I mean, it wouldn't be a good situation. It'd be $34 million in dead money, and they would be in the hole as far as cap savings go with $7.4 million. If you wait until after June 1st to cut him, your cap savings goes to zero, but you would still have a lot of dead money there. I mean, you'd still be paying him some. The dead money would be at $27 million. Yeah, that's not great. That is not great. I mean, listen, Brett Veach, I think, has done a very good job with the Kansas City Chiefs. He's also missed on some things. I think one of them was trading for Orlando Brown and offering them that 6-year contract. Thank goodness he declined that. And I think another one, it's not the offensive tackle position, is the deal he signed Jawaan Taylor to. I know there's this big thing about how Brett Veach can't find wide receivers. I don't think that's really true. I mean, sure, McCole Hardman wasn't maybe the best option. I know a lot of people keep saying DK Metcalf, but he had character issues coming out of college. So it does kind of justify what the Chiefs were doing at the time. But as far as the criticism with Brett Veach goes at the wide receiver position, I mean, I think Rashee Rice, even with that injury this year, I think he's still proven that was a really good draft pick. Xavier Worthy obviously had a great season for Kansas City, and ended up being a big part of Kansas City's offense this year. And I think tied first in the NFL in total touchdowns for a rookie this season. So that ended up being very smart for Kansas City. But as far as the offensive tackle position, that's one where Brett Veach has just failed at. Bringing in Orlando Brown, Jawaan Taylor, Donovan Smith, Kingsley Suamataia, Wanya Morris, DJ Humphries. And look, they've tried. They've certainly tried, but they just haven't figured it out this offseason. They just haven't. So there's a lot that Kansas City needs to figure out with the offensive tackle position, starting with Jawaan Taylor and his contract. What can they do to agree to a restructure, or maybe even come to some sort of an agreement to just pay him a certain amount, accept it, get away from it? I don't know if that's even a possibility, but damn it, man, they need to at least try, because that is a massive cap number right there, $27.3 million. And if you were to cut him after June 1st, that's what you would still have to pay in dead money right there. That is not very good. Not at all. Kansas City's got to figure that out. Listen, Kansas City's got options here in terms of what they can do, players they can work with. Tooney, extending him certainly would help. Mahomes, Kelce. I know Kelce had that pay raise last year, but given the Chiefs in their situation now, and the production you got from Kelce, it wasn't terrible, not as great as it used to be. Certainly a big step down from last year. still a top 5 tight end in terms of yards and receptions. But Kansas City might be overpaying Kelce at that position right there. So I'm very interested in seeing what happens within the next 2 to 3 weeks for the Chiefs and what Brett Veach is going to do. Obviously, this has been a very quiet week and a half for Kansas City. They did their checkout last Tuesday, and they didn't do any media. Usually they do media for checkout day. Did not have that last week. Kind of was a surprise to me. I don't know. Listen, I'll be honest. I have not paid attention in years past because the Chiefs just keep getting to the Super Bowl every year. Obviously, this one was different because they lost it. 2020 was kind of different because that was during the pandemic and everything was virtual and whatnot at the time. But yeah, I just think this was obviously a little weird because you didn't really know how that would work. But Kansas City did not have any media availability for their checkout day. So I don't know what's going to happen. This is going to be a very interesting couple of weeks for Kansas City, to say the least. This is probably going to be Brett Veach's most difficult offseason to date as a general manager. And keep in mind, this is a guy that was able to get the Chiefs to get out of. Remember when the Chiefs had only $177 in cap space? Not $177,000, which is still incredibly low. $177. Yeah, Brett Veach helped the Chiefs get out of that situation before. So if there's anyone that's the right guy for this job, it's definitely Brett Veach, and I trust that he will figure that out in the coming weeks. Easier said than done, but if anyone can do it, it's definitely Brett Veach. Let me just see the chat right now, see if there are any questions, comments here. Like I said, there will not be a Red Friday live chat this Friday, so unless something happens within the next 48 hours, we won't be doing one, so don't expect one. So if you have any questions, drop them below. What will we do with the salary cap raise of the salary cap? Sean is asking. Well, still not much because the Chiefs are just below $8 million, so they've still got some things to figure out. I mean, they still need to free up some space. I see Vicky saying we need to keep Trey Smith. Caleb is saying we need Nick Bolton. Look, man, I'm just being upfront and honest with you guys, and I know a lot of you guys are probably Mizzou fans that want Nick Bolton to stay. I mean, regardless what your college allegiance is, I think everyone wants Nick Bolton to stay, especially when it comes to stopping the run. There are going to be some fan favorites that are going to leave. I've been telling you guys this for a long time. Before training camp even started last year, I mentioned there are going to be a lot of free agents for Kansas City and guys who might play their last game with the Chiefs. Hence why I kept saying you got to pull off the 3, because if you do that, at least from a fan standpoint, you can kind of just relax and maybe not care about what really happens too much in the near future. Obviously, the team does not have that same exact mindset, and obviously the 3-peat didn't happen. But when you're looking at the Chiefs right now, again, DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Reed, Trey Smith, Charles Omenihu, Hollywood Brown, DJ Humphries, Josh Uche, Treshaun Wharton, Derek Nottie, who's been here for several years now, Justin Watson, who's been a depth player for Kansas City, Samaje Perine, who was a big part of Kansas City's pass game coming out of the backfield towards the end of the season. James Winchester, your long snapper, he's up there in age, so we'll see what he decides to do. Kareem Hunt, McCole Hardman, guys who've been around a while. I know Hunt on his second stint was away for a while. Hardman's been on the team a long time. Juju as well on a second stint, is familiar with the offense. I mean, there are a lot of guys here that you got to worry a lot. The reality is not everyone's coming back. That's just not the way it works. So I know some of those guys are fan favorites. Even a guy like Hollywood Brown, who didn't play much but had so much hype coming into the team. I think a lot of people just fell in love with Hopkins right away based on his career, but didn't do a whole hell of a lot with Kansas City. Justin Reed, of course, a big fan favorite. I think Treshaun Wharton certainly gained a lot of favoritism in Kansas City this past season. Nick Bolton, of course, I mentioned. Trey Smith, Matt Araiza, the punter. You have 2 key positions. You also have Spencer Schrader, the kicker, but he's not expected. I mean, the Chiefs had him on reserve for the season, but I mean, the Chiefs have a lot of things to figure out, and the reality is not all of these guys are coming back. There are a lot of guys who probably played their last game wearing a Chiefs uniform. So again, I see all these comments here about Bolton and Smith and wanting to keep those guys. It's going to cost you a lot of money. It's doable. It is doable. And let me just say this right off the bat, because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. And I know no Chiefs fan wants to hear this. I know a lot of you guys are big fans of George Karlaftis and Trent McDuffie, players who the Chiefs got from the 2022 draft class. And by the way, later this month, and I'll get into it later on, not this month, but this offseason, it is the deadline to give the 50-year option to first-round draft picks from the 22 draft class. So I'll get into that later. But here's my thing. What if the Chiefs were to restructure Jawan Taylor's deal and let's throw Patrick Mahomes in there as well, because I think he'll do it. But what if they decided to not give the 5th-year option and maybe not even extend guys like Karlaftis or McDuffie? I think one of the two for sure you're keeping. Which one would I put money on? I don't know. If I had to put money, I'll say Karlaftis, because I do think keeping a proven pass rusher is certainly more vital. Not to say McDuffie's not proven, but you can't keep everyone. I think you guys already know that. But as great as this Chiefs defense is, are you going to have to maybe just sacrifice some of these defensive players? Is letting Nick Bolton walk maybe a smarter decision? Is maybe trading Trent McDuffie an option to get some draft picks? Because, again, the reality is you need a good offensive line if you have Patrick Mahomes. And listen, I know the Chiefs have made it to a Super Bowl 3 years in a row with bad. I mean, listen, they've been to the AFC Championship game every year with Mahomes. Eric Fisher, I think, got better at the tail end of his career, which was the start of Mahomes' career. But after that, the offensive tackle play has not been good in Kansas City at all. Not at all. And I get it. They've reached the Final Four every single year with Mahomes and getting through the Super Bowl 5 of those 7 times. But it's not the most ideal way to go about it. Like, Mahomes is going to get hurt at some point if you do not give him a strong 5 up front on the offensive line. You've got to do it. And in order to pull that off, you might have to settle with moving on from some of these players that a lot of people are in love with, including the organization. I know Lamar Hunt Jr. was on KCMO radio the week of the Super Bowl, and he said his favorite player is Nick Bolton. I mean, I think that shows you how the Hunt family feels about Nick Bolton. But you can't keep everyone. Everyone here loved Tyreek Hill. Couldn't keep him. A lot of people love L'Jarius Sneed, especially with the job he did last year. Couldn't keep him, though. And listen, you know why? You know whose fault it is that you can't keep everyone? It's Kansas City's fault, because they keep drafting so damn well. In other words, this is a great problem to have. I mean, these were problems I still remember 10, 15 years ago the Chiefs did not have. The Chiefs had money to spend. They were trying to get guys to come into their organization, and that is something they struggled with. Now it's kind of the opposite. But there are still some things that need to be worked out. And again, I know this is not a very popular opinion, but if you want to give Patrick Mahomes a strong 5 offensive line, and let's forget about drafting an offensive tackle, though I suppose that's on a lot of people's mock drafts, including mine, you might need to just look for a proven veteran in free agency, someone that's been doing it very well for a long time, not someone that had a flash here and there like DJ Humphries and Donovan Smith. No, someone that's been consistently great at the left tackle position. And that's what you need. And that might require moving on from some of these great players on defense. Because here's the thing. If you have a good offensive line, I think Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, they can kind of revert back to 2018, 2019, 2020, when they were scoring a lot of points those years. And defensively speaking, as much as we all have fallen in love with this defense, what Spags has done and what everyone else has done, because there isn't really an individual that's thriving statistically on defense. No one really is. They are playing well as one cohesive unit. That's what makes this defense so great. But all good things must come to an end. And I suppose because of how much money you paid Chris Jones, how much you're paying Creed Humphrey, how much you potentially would have to pay Trey Smith, you might have to move on from some guys on defense. That might be the unfortunate part. That is the business aspect of it. That's the tough part there. It's not a very popular opinion. I get that, but we've already, if you're a Chiefs fan, you know better than any other fan base that keeping everyone is just not realistic. Tyreek Hill, L'Jarius Sneed, Tyrann Mathieu, they didn't trade Tyrann Mathieu. They let him walk instead, but the point still stands that those are guys that you just couldn't keep. And those are some fan favorites right there. Chris is asking what free agent is not associated with the Chiefs right now currently would you go after? I mean, we're sticking with that left tackle subject right there. I'm just looking at some names. Ronnie Stanley is out there. Cam Robinson. Tyron Smith, he's up there in age. He'll be 34 on September the 1st. But he's a guy that's done a very good job for a long time. I think one underrated player out there who's also up there in age would be Cornelius Lucas from the Washington Commanders. Someone that the Chiefs should definitely look at. Played 11 games, but did well in those 11 games. So only allowed 1 sack and 12 pressures. So those are still good numbers for 11 games. Health would certainly be a concern, but that's out there. Let me just throw this scenario out there. And again, I'm not saying I'm a fan of this or that it will happen, but could the Chiefs maybe give Kingsley Suamataia one more chance? That sounds like a scary proposal there, but because of the cap situation you're in, do you just give the guys that you have, like Wanya Morris and Kingsley Suamataia, one more opportunity? I don't know. I don't think DJ Humphries is in any position to demand a big contract, given that he got hurt when he signed and when he was on the team, he didn't play very well. Is he someone that you could sign for a better deal? Maybe. That's my answer to you, Chris. Brett says, I wonder if Tyreek Hill thinks Tua is still a more accurate QB than Mahomes. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this earlier today, too. Yeah, I know he's the week of the Super Bowl, because a lot of people are doing media. He kind of, did some damage control, but those are still true feelings right there. I remember Davante Adams, his frustration with the Raiders. A lot of people within the organization, and even people who cover the Raiders on a regular basis, they try to cover that up. I don't know why the media felt the need to cover that up. It's not like the Raiders are paying you to do it, but boy, we all know how that ended. He ended up getting out of Vegas and still went to a shitty team. That's how bad of a situation it was for Davante Adams. But yeah, man, my point is, those feelings, I mean, those are, I know it was maybe the heat of the moment right after the game because they had just lost and Tyreek missed the playoffs for the first time in his career. But those are still real emotions right there. I mean, you just gotta, I mean, if you're going to ask for money, which again, Trey Smith might be in that same position as well, might just have to accept the fact you're not going to have the same amount of success if you go elsewhere. Much easier to pick a wide receiver than a tackle. Tackle might be the toughest position, non-QB on the field. Yeah, Doug, you're right. And I know Belichick on his podcast last week was talking about this as well. And I know this has been talked about on local radio as well, that when, when the Chiefs keep picking 32nd, 31st, 28th every year, yeah, it does look to be very hard. Now, it's not impossible to find a great player. We still see guys fall in the draft. Creed Humphrey was a 2nd-round pick. Trey Smith was a 6th-round pick. When you look at other offensive linemen, the Chiefs had Zach Martin, not as big of a name as Trey Smith or Joe Thuney, but they drafted him, I think, in the 7th round, and he ended up playing a lot of games. I think in the same draft class, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif was a 6th-round pick, and he ended up being a great player for Kansas City, a very underrated guard in the NFL. It's just that when he chose to opt out for the pandemic, by the time he came back, the Chiefs were the Chiefs were more committed to who they had at the time, which was Thuney and Smith at the guard position. So it's doable still. I've always said draft position is overrated. It really, really is. I mean, look at Patrick Mahomes. He was passed up on by 10 NFL teams. The Bills traded him to Kansas City. Who was the 9th overall pick that year? It was by the Bengals, and it was John Ross, who was briefly with the Chiefs later on in his career. I mean, John Ross has been considered one of the biggest NFL busts in NFL history, especially with the hype and the speed coming in. And even in Kansas City, they couldn't figure him out. He supposedly retired, but I think he went to the Eagles or somewhere for a little bit. I don't know, but I mean, there you have it. John Ross was one pick before Patrick Mahomes. David says, are the Chiefs looking at Pitts in case Kelce retires? Yeah. So there is a rumor out there that Kyle Pitts, the tight end for the Atlanta Falcons, again, this is a rumor and it's not from a very valid source here. And I saw the guy's Twitter account who said this. I guess he used to do talk radio in Atlanta, but he has just 3,000 followers. I mean, I have like quadruple, centuple the number of followers of that on Twitter. So, I mean, not to judge people based off Twitter followers, but if you're a former sports talk radio host, you would, especially in a city like Atlanta, you would think you have a lot more than that. But according to this alleged former sports talk radio host in Atlanta, I guess the Chiefs have reached out to the Falcons for Kyle Pitts in case Kelce retires. We don't have an update on Kelce. They did not do a podcast today. I was looking forward to that to see if Kelce would say anything. Even if they did do a podcast, I think they would just not acknowledge it anyway. Even knowing that a lot of people would probably tune in for that reason, but no, they did not do a podcast today. They said they're coming back next week, so we'll see if there's going to be any conversation about it on next week's podcast for sure. I'll read a few more questions and then continue on with the show here because I know a lot of you guys probably have questions since we're not doing a Red Friday live chat this week. Oh, by the way, to go look at the salary cap, the Buffalo Bills, I did not realize this about the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills are $14 million over the cap before the increase. After the increase, $10 million. 10.1 to be exact. But I did not realize how bad it was for the Bills. Because I thought all the guys that they let go, like some of the cap casualties they had last offseason, I thought would have kind of alleviated that this offseason. But no, I was wrong about that. And I say that because, Josh Allen did a lot with very little. I mean, he was the only All-Pro from the Bills, and they were one game away from the Super Bowl. And I thought, the Bills have a chance to make some noise here and bring in some weapons for Allen. Not really. I mean, you got to hope for a massive home run in this year's draft because I don't think the Bills are doing much. You know who else is not going to be doing much? The Saints. Even after the salary cap increase, well, before it, they were at $54 million over the cap. They are $47 million over the cap right now. I mean, the Saints have a lot. You think the Chiefs are in a bad spot with the salary cap? The Saints would gladly swap salary cap positions with the Chiefs right now. Do I see someone taking a discount to stay? It's a good question. I would imagine Justin Reed would. I don't think Trey Smith will, nor Nick Bolton. It's just, and I know after the Super Bowl, Nick Bolton was asked, and he said that it feels like home for him because he played nearby collegiately. But let's be honest, man. I mean, those guys were non-first round picks, so they did not make a whole lot of money in their 4 years in the NFL so far. So those guys, I mean, listen, they want to get cars, they want to get houses, they want to help their mom and their dad and their kids and generations to come for their family. I get it. I'm not ever going to shame a player for wanting to do that. So I mean, as far as if you're talking about those key names, Michael, guys who are on rookie deals right now, probably not. Justin Reed, maybe. Kareem Hunt, I mean, he wasn't making much anyway with the Chiefs already. Hollywood, he signed a 1 year, $8 million deal. Hopkins, he's never won a Super Bowl before. Got to play in one, got to score in one. Does winning one matter to him? I don't know. I don't know. Farzine, don't you believe the Chiefs need new, stronger offensive line after a different game, seeing weakness? Listen, your interior offensive line does not need to change. Now, will it change? Possibly, because Trey Smith is a free agent and the guard market skyrocketed the last 2 years. So that's a situation where, if you're the Chiefs, you got to be ready for that right there. Hunter Nordzad, I think, can be a really good pass blocker for Kansas City, but I don't know if the Chiefs are ready to make that change just yet. But that option is certainly on the table for them. I mean, listen, Lee, you know this just as well as anyone. The offensive tackles need to change. It's not easy to do with Jawan Taylor because you're paying him a shitload of money. Can't really get out of that contract right now. And as far as the left tackle spot goes, look, the Chiefs have tried damn near anything and everything since they cut Eric Fisher. Orlando Brown, Donovan Smith, Wanye Morris, DJ Humphries, Kingsley Suamante, like no one's worked. Their best left tackle since cutting Eric Fisher was Joe Thuney. And that's not great for Cam. I mean, listen, I thought he played well in the playoffs. I thought the Thuney at left tackle and Caliendo at left guard, I actually thought it worked well in the regular season. In the playoffs, I thought those two guys took steps backwards. I really did. And listen, I know a lot of people still talk about why didn't the Chiefs make a move? I guess at 17-0, 24-0, you had to try something. But I mean, Kansas City had a lot of issues. I mean, guys were dropping passes. Mahomes was making bad throws. Nothing was really working. Yeah, Cam Robinson at left tackle would be a good idea, but I don't know. Like, how old is Cam Robinson? I think I still have it in front of me. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. I lied. I don't have it in front of me anymore. Oh no, I do. He's gonna be 29 on September the 1st. So not a lot of pressures, but still had some good moments as a pass blocker. So 7 sacks, 52 pressures. It's not great. Just putting that out there. He is, one of the younger options, I guess, when it comes to free agent left tackles, which again is not a very good. It's not a good class of free agent left tackles. So this is a really bad time to need a left tackle. By the way, Sporting Kansas City and Miami are playing tonight. 9.1 degrees. Man, I used to cover college baseball. I covered KU baseball for a year. I still remember when KU there was a massive snowstorm coming in late February, because I did not realize when college baseball really started up, and they had to abandon whatever weekend schedule they had, and they went to Arkansas for the weekend where the weather was a little bit better, and they were able to. And my friend and also the head coach of Benedictine baseball, he was the director of baseball operations at the time, Eric Peterson. He got to work last minute and scheduled three games that they were not expecting to play. Those teams had an open schedule there, so they were able to figure that out. I just, for the life of me, cannot understand why Major League Soccer and college baseball have to start in February. I mean, I guess if you're in Texas or Florida, you don't really give a damn, because you probably play your non-conference games are also teams probably nearby. Maybe one of them are far away, but Jesus, man. 9 degrees. Like, who is even at the game? Who's watching the game? That's wild. Yeah. See, some of you guys are reacting to my suggestion about moving on from defensive players. I'm not saying this with any excitement. I don't want to move on from Nick Bolton. I don't want to move on from Trent McDuffie or George Karlaftis. I don't want to see those guys wear another team's jersey, but you gotta pick and choose your battles. Okay. Listen, let me give you an example here. Let's say you hit the jackpot. Okay. You still choose to stay in the home that you're in, but maybe you want a few cars. You want to get yourself a Cadillac. You want to get yourself a Lamborghini. You want to get yourself a Tesla. You want to get yourself, a few other cars here. Well, you don't have that much room in the driveway or in the garage for that many cars. Like, you kind of have to pick and choose what you want at that point. Yeah, you got the money for it, but you can't have it all. Um, I would love to, spend all my days watching Netflix and Disney Plus and Hulu, and also, watching whatever else is on TV, all the sports action, and also, spend a lot of time reading, and also spend a lot of time playing video games. But I also have this thing called work. Like, you don't have all the time in the world. You have to pick and choose what you want to do. That's the same thing here. If you're Kansas City, you've got to pick and choose what you want. Do you want to sacrifice a couple of really good defensive players so that way you can have 4 or 5 strong offensive linemen? And for crying out loud, you got to protect your franchise quarterback. Because I think if you have the offensive line set, everything else will fall into play. You're not going to have as dominant of a defense, but Peyton Manning, I mean, when he was in Indianapolis, he hardly had a great defense there. I mean, there were a couple of good players there. You had Robert Mathis, a couple other guys here. I mean, it wasn't a great group of defensive players in Indy, but he was great. He had a great offensive line. He had a couple of great wide receivers. He had a reliable running back and edge. And the rest of it just kind of fell into place there. So I think if you're Kansas City, listen, coaching certainly helps as well. Spags, no one seems to want to take Spags away from Kansas City. So, Spags will always get the best out of his defensive players. So I suppose that's something to consider as well. I know McDuffie's not a big cap player to worry about this moment. My point is, he is eligible for a new contract this year. And so if you sign him, it does make it harder to want to keep everyone, because then in 2026, 2027, well, if you found a way to keep Bolton and Smith, 2027, you're going to be in cap hell. And I know no one gives a damn about 2027 right now, but you can't just, you cannot be the Lakers. The Lakers always try to, they do this all the time. They will give away these young, talented players who have bright futures, and they'll bring in veterans just to try to win in the short term. I mean, listen, it would be easier to talk about if the Chiefs had the three-peat, but again, that's not how teams operate. You can't just say, oh, we three-peated. Who gives a shit about the rest of the next 5-10 years? No, I mean, they still have a job to do. So they've got to figure it out. Like I said, it would have been awesome if they kept Tyreek Hill and L'Jarius Sneed and Tyrann Mathieu, but you can't keep everyone. Do you maybe sacrifice some of these guys that you have on defense for the betterment of Patrick Mahomes? That's my point. Again, I'm not, because I know no one wants to hear that suggestion, but you got to pick and choose what you want to do to succeed and try to keep winning. Born and raised in Columbia, Missouri, and Bolton fan, we probably use him as draft capital unless he's willing to take a team-friendly deal. Well, if they use a franchise tag, and the report is they won't. At least that's from Nate Taylor. So that's the thing. We don't really know. Thomas says, scary part is they have tried year after year, and simply nobody in this entire organization can seem to identify the offensive line. This is very true. Specifically the tackles. Yeah, this is that's the most frustrating thing, because they have found guys. And even Louis Riddick, who's really good at predicting these kinds of things, he was saying before the season that Kings is going to be an all-pro and an all rookie team, all those things, Pro Bowler. Boy, not even close. Now, keep in mind, Riddick was the same guy who said that Rashee Rice was going to be a stud. He had a home run on that prediction. I mean, yes, he got hurt, but still, I mean, a lot of people are expecting big things from Rice coming back. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, the Kingsley one is a pretty frustrating one, because a lot of people felt pretty good about that draft pick. The Chiefs traded up. I know it was just one spot, but even if it's one spot or 10 spots, when you trade up, that means somebody else, you find out, wants that same player. And Kansas City beat whoever the other team was to the punch. And it turned out so far to be for nothing. I mean, I see all these rumors, and I know the Chiefs in that Week 18 game against Denver, they put Kingsley at guard. Could he be Trey Smith's replacement? I don't like that idea. But I suppose that's something that people are going to keep in mind. Sumatia might have been decent in college, but this is the pros. The best defensive ends are going to work him. Yeah, I mean, you're certainly right about that. I like Kingsley for his run blocking ability, but you can't just, on running play, substitute the left tackle. Oh, running play, Kingsley going, like, then you give it away at that point. I don't know, man. Like, I want it to work out because I would love to have a magic wand and say, Kingsley, you're going to play like an all-pro, especially since you're on a rookie deal and it saves Kansas City with the cap situation, but that's just not how it works. Not how it works. Yeah, Alex, you're right. I mean, there are a lot of guys you're going to be saying goodbye to. That's, again, not saying that with any excitement, but that's kind of the way it works. Donald says it's Noah Gray time. Plus, we drafted a big bad tight end in Jared Wiley. Yeah, Wiley got hurt, so we'll see what he does in his second season. Noah Gray, I think Noah Gray's ready for that number one role. So the Kyle Pitts thing kind of threw me off. So I don't really know. Michael, if you listen to me long enough, anyone who's listened to me knows my thoughts on Leo Chenal. I was really huge on Leo Chenal going into last season. I know a lot of people missed Willie Gay and thought that there was going to be a change there. I was ready to see Leo Chenal for a long time. And I think Leo Chenal proved himself. He got a couple of votes for All-Pro, which actually surprised me. I mean, I didn't think he was an All-Pro player, but I thought, if you're just judging him based on run stopping ability, boy, he was an All-Pro in that area. I'd like to see him rush the passer a little more. He did a better job of that the year before. But I like Leo Chenal. So listen, different roles, but I would not mind to see him. I think that might be more suited for Drue Tranquill to handle Bolton's duties than Leo Chenal. That's just my opinion there. They do, yeah. Doug, you're right. They do need a better linebacker in coverage. That's not something Bolton was really good at. So that's something they've got to figure out for sure. And I think Tranquill took a little bit of a step back in that category. Hopkins lackluster performance this season. I doubt there are many teams willing to pay up for him. Maybe he will take a team-friendly deal and stay, try to win a ring. Yeah, maybe, Joey. Sometimes with these veterans, when they're on the tail end of their career, and we know Hopkins is up there in his early 30s, going to be getting close to the mid-30s, they want to try to squeeze out as much money as they can from the league before they retire. But unless he's been smart with his money, yeah, he could certainly go that route for sure. Easier said than done, though. We'll see what they do. You saw baseball practice in North Lake College in January in Irving, Texas. Are you a Scout Lee? I remember when I was the PA announcer for Johnson County Community College. Not to get too off topic here, but kind of a fun fact. It was Johnson County Community College and another community college. I can't remember who it was. It ended up being a pitching duel. It was like a 2-1 game. There were not a lot of runs scored in that game. There were a shit ton of scouts. A lot of major league scouts. And some of them kind of going wherever. The scout for the New York Yankees came and sat by us in the tent. And he had his radar gun because he wanted to keep an eye on both pitchers. And so, baseball, you guys know baseball is a slow sport. So there's a lot of downtime. So we were kind of talking to the guy and he goes, yeah, this is what I do after 2 divorces. I'm like, have at it, man. I mean, listen, working in baseball is not easy. The people who do it, props to them. That's difficult. But yeah, it was kind of cool just to see all the scouts and be around some of the pro scouts that were with us in the tent there. Yeah, a couple of you guys are mentioning the Ohio State linebacker, or I'm sorry, left tackle, rather. That's certainly an option as well. If you guys have any more questions, drop them below. I'll get to them because, like I said, we are not going to be doing a Red Friday live chat unless there is any breaking news for the Chiefs within the next 48 hours. Before we move on, I want to let you know that we have a new sponsor here, Fathead. Fathead is a proud sponsor of the Chiefs Zone podcast. I saw some of you guys mention that you guys didn't even know Fathead was still a thing. They were huge 20 years ago when they kind of got started. And they're still around kicking today. They've got a lot of great products out there. If you guys own Man Cave, you put it on the wall, it's easy to peel off, remove it, put it elsewhere. You want to maybe spice up your man cave, one of the bedrooms. Maybe your kid wants to have a fathead in his room right there. And there are a lot of options. You can have the Chiefs logos, just with the logo itself, the helmet, or kind of like the street looking ones with the Chiefs on there. Maybe you want to get one of the players. And there are some options for current and former players, guys like Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tony Gonzalez, Derek Thomas, and more. And if you guys use my Fathead link, and I will drop that in the comments right now, you can purchase from Fathead, and with my link, you will get free standard shipping in the United States. So go use my link over at Fathead. I just dropped it in the comments below. If you use that link, you will get free standard US shipping when you purchase from Fathead. Go to fathead.com, use my link, and get free shipping when you purchase using my link. All right, before we get out of here, and again, if you guys have any other questions, I'll keep an eye on the chat. Otherwise, this will be our last two topics before we get out of here. Just some things to be aware of this offseason in the NFL. The NFL Scouting Combine, that starts February 27th, a week from tomorrow. That is coming up pretty quickly. Yeah. When you keep reaching the Super Bowl every year, it is a very quick turnaround from the Super Bowl, the end of the season, essentially, to the NFL Combine. You kind of forget that. I remember when the Royals made it to the World Series 2 years in a row. It was a very quick turnaround from baseball season to college basketball, because college basketball is always a huge deal in Kansas City, especially if you're a Kansas fan. Maybe not this year. Yeah. Maybe not this year, but even in a year like this, it's still getting talked about a lot, but for different reasons, of course. So that is going to go the combine from the 27th to the 2nd. Yeah, we are almost at March. And then March 4th at 3 p.m. Central Time, that is the deadline for teams to use the franchise tag. So if the Chiefs want to change their mind, they have until 3 p.m. March 4th. And then a week later, on March the 10th through the 12th, that is on a Monday to Wednesday, that is the legal negotiating period. So teams can talk to players and agents of other teams, but let's be honest, they kind of do that shit at the combine. If we're being completely honest, a lot of that happens at the combine. Then Wednesday, March 12th, 3 p.m. Happy New Year. It is a new league year. Free agency officially begins. You can start signing players. Trades can officially go through. Sometimes we see trades unofficially agreed on beforehand. We saw that with the Alex Smith trade. We saw it with the Marcus Peters trade, and a few more in years past. Twice Alex Smith has been traded before the new league year. Once from San Francisco to KC, and another from KC to Washington. So, yeah, we've seen that in the past. Those will all be official on March the 12th as early as 3 p.m. And then Monday, April 7th, teams that have a new head coach can begin their offseason workout programs. If a team has a returning head coach, they've got to wait 2 weeks later on Monday, April the 21st. In recent years, the Chiefs have been doing a more virtual thing. Patrick Mahomes obviously spends a lot of his offseason in Texas, and he has a lot of players who come over, and they do a lot of their thing with Bobby Stroop. The running backs, receivers, they all go there and work out with them there. The NFL draft is going to be on Thursday, April the 24th through the 26th in Green Bay. May 1st, deadline for teams to use the 50-year option on first-round draft picks from 2022. So McDuffie, Karlaftis, those are your eligible guys to get the first-round option, or I'm sorry, the 50-year option. So we'll see what the Chiefs want to do. They have until May 1st to decide on all of that. So a lot of things to look forward to in the coming weeks for the Kansas City Chiefs and the NFL in general there. And it's obviously going to be a very interesting offseason given the Chiefs and their cap situation right now. I would imagine this time next week, we have to hear something. Something has to happen. So we'll see what they do there. Joey says, I heard Chris Jones was restructuring his contract to free up cap space. I don't know. I haven't heard that. By the way, let me just get this out of the way. I was not planning on discussing this. I don't know why, but I kind of called this out on Twitter. There are a lot of Facebook pages and Facebook groups that spread a lot of fake news. I don't know why. I don't know why people feel the need to do that. But Yeah, there's a lot of fake news out there. So when you see someone saying something completely unrealistic, that Isaiah Pacheco has re-signed, which is not possible because he's already under contract, please don't believe that shit. Please don't. Someone also said that Hopkins, this was right after the Super Bowl. Someone said that Hopkins signed a 4-year deal with the Chiefs. Where's the logic in signing a 32-year-old player to a 4-year deal? Like, come on. I mean, use your brains a little bit, people. So I'm just telling you right now, be aware of some of the fake news that's out there with some Chiefs pages and groups. I used to be in some Chiefs Facebook groups because I kind of want to see what other people are saying about the Chiefs. Then I'm like, you know what? My following has grown a lot over the years. I don't need Facebook groups, especially when they keep posting fake news and I don't want to see it on my timeline. Facebook has changed recently to where even if you're not following certain people, their posts still come up on your timeline based on your algorithm. It's like, great. That's fun. I totally want to see all this fake news on my newsfeed. Totally. It's kind of like Twitter, where Elon, even if you're not following him for whatever reason, his tweets are always on the top of your For You list. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, listen, if you keep Eagles fans are putting out a fake quote from Brittany Mahomes saying that the referees didn't do anything and Mahomes was being tackled like an animal. Brittany Mahomes has not commented once on the Super Bowl. So Eagles fans that want to just shit on her just because they don't like her. And again, people love to drive up their own narrative. Thankfully, we've seen some fact checkers come out and reject the idea that Brittany even said this. Now they're doing fake quotes with Jackson Mahomes. I mean, this is just hilarious to me. I don't know how people have time to come up with fake stories. I guess when McDonald's is not paying certain people a certain amount of hours, not giving them those kinds of hours that they want, I guess you got a lot of free time on your hands. I don't know, man. If I had that much free time on my hands, dude, I'd be doing so much way better things with my time. But that's me, I guess. But I just had to get that out there. Because again, I don't want to say the certain things. I mean, I've already given a couple examples, but I've seen many, many more over the years. It's like, why people somehow benefit from this, which is sad too. Couple other stories before I get out of here. John Sherman, obviously the Kansas City Royals, they are in Arizona getting spring training underway. And John Sherman spoke to the media. He said that there is a deal, quote unquote, buttoned up. A lot of you guys are speculating that it's going to be the Washington Square Park area. That's kind of where the NFL draft had some activities going on there, that area, which is just east of Union Station. Certainly not a bad spot. If you actually, if you guys have the map app on your Apple iPhones or whatever GPS map you have on your smartphone, or Google Maps, whatever you want to look up, if you actually go look up Union Station on there, and if you go just a little bit to the right of it, you will see there's a lot of space there, and there's a lot of space for parking as well. That is certainly one good option to have. And I know the mayor is big on having a beautiful downtown backdrop and all that for a baseball stadium. Not that hard to do. If they build it right, have it set the right way. If you're standing behind home plate, you can see a great view of downtown. So I would imagine that's the deal that is quote unquote buttoned up for John Sherman, the Royals, and the city of Kansas City. So we'll see what they do in the coming weeks. What does that mean for the Chiefs? Chiefs have been fairly quiet on this. Now it's 2025. Keep in mind the Chiefs, if they don't renew their deal with the Jackson County Authority Sports Complex, which is the group that owns the stadiums Kauffman and Arrowhead, they've got to find another place to play. And if you're going to build a new stadium, those things, listen, I think the Raiders Stadium took about 4 years to build, 3 or 4 years to build. If you're going to go to a new stadium, man, the ball needs to start rolling on that very, very soon. By this summer, there has to be something out there because the stadium talks, they've gotten quiet. As far as we've heard, ever since that April 2nd vote failed, the state of Kansas has kind of been very aggressive in trying to get the Chiefs to come over. And they've been moving on that thing pretty quickly because, I mean, if you want to build a new stadium, it's got to start very soon. Now, I don't know what's going to happen. If the Royals are leaving, I think there is an option to keep playing at Arrowhead for the time being. And at the same time, where Kauffman Stadium is, depending on the Royals get out of there, you could probably build a brand new stadium where Kauffman is. That would really be your only option if you want to stay in Jackson County, and specifically the Truman Sports Complex. But regardless, whether they want to build a new stadium in Missouri or Kansas, you got to figure it out very soon. Otherwise, the longer this takes, the more I'm just inclined to believe that they're going to lean closer to renovations. Listen, I know the Chiefs were not very happy with the outcome of that vote. That vote was not even close. And I know a lot of people have their opinions as to why the vote went the way it did. I mean, there are some groups out there that may have certainly been responsible for it, but listen, I don't know. I know a lot of people keep talking about that old Kansas City Star Pavilion building. I mean, listen, I hate to see buildings just being there doing nothing, but I don't know if that's a really good spot for a stadium. I don't know. Listen, the Royals, I think the option they have at Washington Square Park, that's a great place to go. And the skyline can be perfectly set in the background there. I know that's a big part of, because I think downtown stadiums, that's a thing now with a lot of these cities that have teams, football, baseball, whatever it may be. If you're the Chiefs, you got to start figuring out something very soon. Very, very soon. We haven't heard much, so hopefully we hear something in the coming weeks. All right. Last thing before I get out of here. Obviously, during the season, we heard Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Joe Burrow. Obviously, Mahomes and Kelce with the Chiefs and Burrow with the Bengals. Those three players, they had their homes broken into during the season, and it was kind of weird. It was very calculated, too. The Chiefs had their Monday Night Football game against the Saints this year. That was right before the bye week. And by the way, for those who don't know how this works, even if you're the home team, players stay in a hotel the night before a game. And a big reason for this is to avoid distractions, keep players focused, keep them with the team, which was always a surprise to me. I didn't realize this. I know that Kansas Jayhawks football team, they actually have their football players. They do this for college too. They actually go to somewhere in the Kansas City area, and then they go back to Lawrence to play their home game. Now, to my understanding, you know, the idea of being at home is you get to sleep in the comfort of your own bed and whatnot. To my understanding, they do go to top tier hotels to make sure that these players are on comfortable beds the night before a game. But anyway, so the weekend where the Chiefs were getting ready for the Monday Night Football game, I think that was when the Chiefs were in a hotel. Patrick Mahomes' home, I guess, was empty at the time. That was broken into, and Travis Kelce's home was broken into. I think the timeline is a little still not clear on that, when it exactly happened, whether it was the night before the game or the same night as the game. For Joe Burrow, and I think it was against the Dallas Cowboys, his home was broken into during the Monday Night Football game. Remember the one where the Bengals punted and the Cowboys blocked it, but then they fumbled it? Something weird happened during that sequence of events. That I'm just trying to give you guys an idea of the game that was. But during that game, Burrow's home was broken into. Now, as far as we know, someone was home for Burrow. It was a woman. Now, I don't know this woman, what his relation is to him, but she was home at the time. 7 men have been charged with the invasions of the homes of Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Joe Burrow. Now, listen, we all know criminals are stupid, because, I mean, that's self-explanatory. I don't need to get into the reasons why. There are selfies of these criminals in Joe Burrow's house and Patrick. The second selfie, I don't know if that's Mahomes' house or Travis Kelce's house, but they're holding the chains and all these things, all the expensive stuff that they can get their hands on, and they're smiling and taking a picture. I've never broken into a home and robbed anything before. But if I was to do it, I sure as hell would not be taking selfies. If anything, I would be in a damn hurry to grab whatever I can and get the hell out of there. Now, Terry brings up a good point in the chat here about their security system. That is my question, because all three of those guys are making a lot of money. And even the players that don't make top tier money, like Burrow, Mahomes, and Kelce, they still have, I mean, they can afford a solid security system. I'm not going to go into the details, but I do know of some of the systems that players have for their homes. Listen, I think a lot of people today in 2025 have some sort of security system, whether it's an alarm or they have doorbell or Ring cameras or Nest cameras or both. And I'm sure Mahomes, Kelce, and Burrow all have that for their homes. I don't know about Burrow's house. I don't know anything about his living situation. I think everyone knows where Mahomes and Kelce live because it's been publicized so much, even before this whole burglary thing. I'm actually very familiar with Kelce's neighborhood because I used to know people from high school and college that lived in that neighborhood. It is a gated community. I mean, you have to have a passcode in order to be able to get into that neighborhood. And I think Kelce moved in there to get away from all the Swiftie stalkers. And according to Jason Kelce, he's still been dealing with that even while living in a gated community. Again, people have too much time on their hands. So I guess it's not that difficult to get into that neighborhood and get into Kelce's home. Unfortunately, that happened. Mahomes, I think he's in a gated community as well. I'd be shocked if he wasn't. His previous home, which again was publicized very well, was not in a gated community. So yeah, I'm a little confused about the security system on those homes, because if someone were to break into my home, the alarm's going off and police would be calling my phone saying, "Hey, we got a break in here. Are you home?" I'd say, "No, I'm not. Would you like us to send police?" Obvious response would be yes. So I don't know. There are some, and I get that the investigation is still ongoing, but it kind of surprised me that, because if I'm putting myself in the shoes of a criminal breaking into someone's home, if I hear the alarm buzzing and going off, I would need to be in a hurry to grab whatever I can grab and get the hell out of there. Those guys were literally taking selfies, which tells me they were in no hurry to get out of there, because there was no alarm sounding off where those guys were in there. That is a very, very weird situation. And again, I know the stories, the details still coming out with those stories. I guess those three guys, they need better home protection, because whatever they had was not working very well. I'm just saying. Hopefully they'll get that all figured out. But those 7 men are being charged, and to the Athletic mentioned they're all from Chile. So yeah, I know that's a whole nother subject there with people crossing the border and whatnot, but you guys can listen to that on some other podcast that it maybe knows a lot more about that than I do. So there's that. All right, I appreciate you guys. Yeah, one of them took his shirt off. Dude, like, what are you doing? How? It is crazy. Do the Chiefs go after Cooper Kupp? I don't think so. I mean, he's going to be looking for a big deal, and the Chiefs have other things they've got to figure out in the meantime. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Reminder, if there's no breaking news, there will not be a Red Friday live chat this Friday, so do not expect one. We'll still be putting content out there, so if you guys see them, please like, comment, share those. That really does help us out, especially in the off season. So we'll still be continuing all of that talk with reels, all that stuff in the coming days and weeks. Even if there is not a whole lot of news, we'll still have things to talk about. Until then, do not expect the podcast until next Wednesday. That'll be right before the Combine. So we'll talk about the Combine next Wednesday. We'll see if Travis Kelce gives any update on retirement and any kind of news that could come out about the Chiefs in terms of freeing up more room with the salary cap. My name is Farzin Vasugian. Thank you all for joining me for this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. I'm out. Take care.